It's not Axial Fest compliant anymore. What's going on, guys? Welcome back. Crazy for KV's RC. I'm Tim. Welcome back to my channel. Thanks for watching. So, as you saw in the last episode, we're doing an update on the Bronco. This is what I've made it into. I decided just to turn it into a sled that I can pull behind other trucks. No, obviously just kidding. Let me show you what I did with the truck. Probably gonna look like nothing when you first see it. All right, so it looks very normal. You might notice tires look a little bit different, but other than that, you know, we got stock bumpers, stock body, still rocking the spare tire. I'm gonna take the body off and we'll get into it. I'll talk through what I did, what it took to get done what I got done, and ultimately what I think about it. Not gonna be a drive today, but I do look forward to taking this out here in the near future. Okay, so now you know, you guys can kind of see things a little bit better. I'll throw some B-roll in here and show you guys some pictures, but this kind of helps me remember what it took, kind of walk through it in a, you know, somewhat logical way. So for starters, if you haven't watched the first video, I would say go back and watch it just so you can kind of see what my reasoning was, what my thoughts were going into this project, the reason I took it on. And but yeah, I'll link that video up here and you guys can check that out. You may have seen previously on the channel, I had an SCX 10.3, the Jeep, the JL, and I built that as a kit and put a ISDT 70. It's kind of like their 1080 competitor ESC. It's got built-in Bluetooth, which is really cool. You don't need a programming card or box or anything special. You can do it right on your phone. But I actually recently sold that because I never really liked how it drove. Really top heavy. These Axial bodies, a lot of the new RTR bodies are getting very, very bulky. The detail is great. You get a lot of molded parts, you get a lot of details, scale details, you know, fairly detailed interiors. It's got all the way down to gas pedals and, you know, steering wheel. Center console looks great, seats, roll cage, etc. But it was a very top heavy truck. It was 7.5 pounds without a battery. For a big pack, for the trails, maybe 3,000 all the way up to perhaps 5,000, you're talking probably 8 pounds. And that's just too heavy, honestly, especially for those stock electronics. It was rocking the stock Spectrum Electronics brushed motor. I think it's a 35 turn, little 3-slot. It also had the 2-in-1 radio, ESC combo. I think the factory radio is that SLT. Not exactly sure about that, but long story short, very top heavy, not a great performer. Transmission's really bulky, heavy, complicated. So I was kind of thinking, I ended up with this Bronco in a lot of things that I bought, and it was for sale originally, and not a lot of interest in it because they were just on a sale for such a great price. I was asking pretty close to the sale price for a used truck, and I get why people don't want to spend that. It was just, you know, a little bit more than what I was asking for it. So I started looking through my parts box. I know that these AR45 axles, these are the straight axles, which I like a little more than the portals, especially with that high center of gravity. I knew that I wanted to keep the axles or do something with them, and I started thinking about what all I had. I had just gotten a Vanquish Phoenix portal kit as part of the Trucks of Freedom, Vanquish's 4th of July sale. I actually have a couple of these chassis with all the molded parts because I used one in my A1 and my C3, which are, you know, titanium tubed buggies, very different. But I'll link those up there too if you're new to the channel, haven't seen it. The C3 is kind of what kicked my channel off. But you don't really use much for those. You do use the transmission, you use the skid, but that was it. So I knew I was working with a couple sets of chassis rails, pretty much all the plastic parts to make it work, and I had just gotten a brand new portal kit that I was keeping the axles for a future build. So I knew I had pretty much all the makings to kind of, you know, up the performance of this thing. So I did a chassis swap. So at the heart of this thing, this is a VS4-10 chassis swap. It's out of a Phoenix Portal kit, but pretty much most of them are the same. I did use the VFD Twin out of that Portal kit, mostly because later on I do like the idea of incorporating dig into this truck. It had dig originally. These axles have pretty good steering. Dig is just going to help it a little bit more. I don't know if I'll use the overdrive option, but I have all the parts saved, put aside for it, just in case I want to. So let's just get into it, what I did, what it took to get here. Not a lot of filming along the way, because honestly, if you have a leftover Vanquish kit and you have a truck like this, you should be able to do this, especially if you have a decent collection of parts at this point in the hobby for you. We talked in the last video about my electronics, and we'll get to that. So what I ended up doing is I went ahead and I assembled the chassis. I threw in the dual servo mount that comes with it. I built the transmission. I actually left the trans tunnel plastic parts off. Don't need them. They don't serve any purpose. They're just cosmetic. It's just added weight above, you know, the center line of the chassis. I went ahead and threw in this rear portion with the fuel cell and all the cross bracing. It really makes it a super rigid chassis, way more rigid than the 10.3. Immediately what I started looking at was body mounting. So I actually had to Dremel a little bit off these. If you know anything about the 10.3s, they have body mounts on the body and they go down and they key in here. They're kind of a pain. They're not as bad on this as they are on the Jeep. So I started looking, the actual bumper mounts are the exact same width as Vanquish uses. So those are already incorporated into these chassis braces slash dual servo mount. So I just went ahead and pulled them off, started playing with them a little bit, and started playing with getting the body mounted somewhat where I think it needed to be. So it was actually in the back here that I did Dremel off some of this body mount system that kind of ties into the bumper, and I'll show you guys here in a better picture. But I don't think I needed to. This is pretty much roughly where it needs to be. It does take a little bit of bending of those body mounts to get them where I want them, but the body looks great on there, and I'm happy with it. So for the front body mounts, I'll get you guys some pictures. A little bit hard to see. It's just these little plastic pieces that have the holes in them for the body mounts on the body. They kind of tie into the front grille. In order to get them to sit level, the holes do not line up. The one hole lines up fine. The other one doesn't even really line up with the chassis at all. So I just have one screw in there right now. If I need to, I can put another hole in that plastic, drill a hole through the frame, and just kind of let it tap itself into that dual servo mount. So once I had the body mounted, I knew I was on track, ready to roll. So then I actually built the transmission. I threw a Hobbywing Fusion SE in there. First time using one. This is the 1800 kV. They're recently running these on sale. If they're still on sale, pick them up. I've done a little bit of testing here on the bench, and it is phenomenal. So quiet, so smooth. The low speed startup is not quite as good as the Fusion Pro, but for half the price, hard to beat, especially for like a trail rig. Another benefit to the Fusion, I didn't have to find a spot for my ESC. So I just did a quick little wiring job. I'm also running an EcoPower 120T at 7.4 volts, about 400 ounce inches, plenty for this truck. I do like a little bit more if it's gonna be very performance oriented, very competitive type truck. But like I said, not too worried about it. Again, I left out the optional servos for dig and overdrive. We're locked in low overdrive, and obviously we're not locked in dig. One of the things I could not find out of my Phoenix Portal kit, I must have put them in a different bin that I shouldn't have, was my drive shafts. So the factory Axial drive shafts were actually a little bit too short, and I didn't have any of the optional pieces to make them longer. So I had a set of metal drive shafts. These are from RC Speedy. They're very similar to the Incision steel drive shafts. So I just threw those on there. So as you can see, I'm not running those Axial shocks anymore. These are the first edition Incision shocks. These are from Vanquish. These actually come with the Pro, with the Ultra. You can get them separately as well. I have an Ultra. I threw the new Vanquish or Incision shocks on there, the S8Es, a little bit nicer. So these are 80 millimeters. These are intended for a portal truck. I decided to go with these just to save the S8Es from the portal kit for something else. And it was going to be the same length shock either way. These do have a tendency to leak pretty bad, so they're really easy to rebuild. Just make sure you don't overfill them, and usually they're okay. But most shocks tend to leak, I feel like, eventually, especially if you let them sit under their own weight. Another thing you can see, I am running the factory plastic bead locks. I love the look of them. They have the screw-on knockoffs that cover up the wheel nut, which is really cool. And I was trying to think about tires. I wanted it to be a scale tire, and I actually had a brand new set of these Proline KM3s in G8 compound. Got them as part of that lot that I got, and we're just running stock foams in them for now. This probably will get some dual stage foams. It's a pretty heavy truck, but for now I like it. I think it's going to do really well. The tires feel a lot better than those factory Axial tires. One reason I usually go to dual stage is because factory Proline foams are a little too stiff. Well, and on this truck, they're actually not too bad because it's so heavy, you know, close to that 7-pound mark. Without a battery, probably 7.25, 7.5 with a battery. So that was all the easy stuff. Like I said, if you have a spare VS4-10 Phoenix or whatever kit, you can probably make 90% of this work very easily for the full chassis swap. We're still running the AR-45 straight axles. Obviously, that was one of the things I wanted to utilize. And we actually are running full stock links in the rear from the Phoenix Portal kit, stock lowers, the stock uppers in the rear, and we are running stock lowers in the front. We're running a stock front upper link that I needed to be a little bit longer just to give me the right angles for my drive line, to be determined if it's exactly where I want it. Once I get it where I want it, I will order either a custom made link, make my own. I just didn't have anything that was a hair longer than that factory front upper link. We're running a factory tie rod from Vanquish from the Portal kit, a factory steering link. So while we're talking about links, I do want to mention that that front upper link, I did have to relocate it outside of that double sheared mount on the axle, and I'll show you a little bit better here. Basically what I had to do is put it on the outside of that mount in order to clear the spur gear cover. Could have removed that, but this being kind of a trail rig, I worried about debris getting in there, whatnot. So I actually just put a pivot ball in the double shear portion of that, put that on the outside, and ran a long screw through it. If you do that, you do want to support the mount on the inside of it with something like a pivot ball. But we'll see. Time will tell if it holds up. If I end up breaking it, I might end up buying a new set of axle housings and taking the spur gear cover off to get it, you know, properly double sheared. But we'll see. The only other thing I had to do some figuring on was the panhard, and that's because the panhard mount on these AR-45s is in a different spot than on a pair of F10s. So I ended up ordering, the only thing I bought for this, now obviously if you don't have electronics, a receiver, whatever, servo, you're gonna have to buy some things. The only thing I had to buy was a 73 millimeter steering link from Element, Team Associated, whatever you want to call them. It's their factory team, 73 millimeter. They come in a pair of 2. It was like $6 plus a couple dollars shipping. Not too bad. Got here pretty quick, and actually works out really well. No bump steer, nothing like that. I get pretty good angles. These tires being wider and having the factory hexes and wheels, I cannot steer to full lock without hitting the lower links in the front. So I got to turn down just a little bit, but overall they're pretty good. I get pretty decent steering angles out of it. Like I said, I may look to throw dig in this at some point. We're running unvented tires because the wheels are vented on these Axial wheels. So this is a truck that actually will do really well for just some like trailing, small little creek crossings, play in the water a little bit. I don't have a lot of trucks that I like to, you know, take out and intentionally get them wet. But one of the things I do need to do still is I want to drill a couple holes in the fuel cell. I'm going to leave it open because it doesn't really matter. I'm running the factory Vanquish battery mount, but I am looking to design up a small little plate up here where a winch would go, and run really tiny little packs that'll fit between the steering servo and the shock mount, just to give it a little bit of forward weight bias, keep the weight from the back here, and you know, if I want to really test the performance, I can. So what's next for this thing? Next is I need to drive it. Need to get out and drive it. It might be a week or two before I have a chance to do that. Additionally, it has pretty good front weight bias now. I have some corner scales. We'll throw it on the corner scales. We'll see what kind of bias it has. But I think I'm going to do a brass diff cover front and rear just to get rid of those red diff covers. If you're just trying to get rid of the color, you can dye them. You can use RIT dye. There's a lot of videos about that. But I actually would like a little bit of weight down low. One more thing I may do, I might throw some brass knuckles on it up front. But other than that, that is the only plans I have for this. Looking forward to having, you know, a little bit more of a scale truck. It's not Axial Fest compliant anymore. But I'm gonna do the last few things to this off camera. You guys will see them in the next video. Like I said, gonna just put some drain holes in the fuel cell just in case it gets a little wet. I'm gonna put a little bit of preload on the rear. The body's just a little heavy for it. We'll see if these 80mm shocks do the trick. If not, I'll buy a set of 90s to throw on there. So I encourage all of you, you know, if you have a body you love with a lot of really good detail, Traxxas has really good bodies, Axial's got really good bodies, but you're not really a huge fan of how they perform. Neither the 10.3 or the TRX4 are real performers. They look great. They do pretty good on the trail, especially like dirt trails, high breakover stuff, because they have quite a bit of ground clearance. But for actual crawling, not always the best. So I encourage you to look through your parts bin as you accrue different parts from different kits, and brainstorm a little bit and get creative. This is something that I decided to take it down from being on sale and see if I can enjoy it in this current setup. That's gonna do it. Thanks for watching. Before you go, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and ring the notification bell. Kind of getting back into the swing of things, making videos, trying to do one a week at least. Gonna try to do some occasional live streams, but leave a comment down below. If you have any questions, definitely leave a comment. Go to my Instagram, you can DM me there, and I will do my best to send you pictures, explain what I had to do. Very straightforward, not a difficult conversion. Just took some time, that's all. But thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.